David's heart and sin. I spent almost about 8 hours talking to two different people about David, and then we had a little bit of debate on, what some people thought about David's sin, and some people were actually thinking, David is this evil person, and he got away with sin that he shouldn't got away with, and stuff. So I kind of want to deal with it. I want to see if I can clarify some of the stuff that some people will believe, because David didn't get away with any sins. So we have two issues. We have an issue where it says that David was a man after God's own heart, and then we had his sins or whatever, and David had killed too many people in order to build the temple, so he was not allowed because he was a man of war. Basically he's a murderer, and then the sins that he does. So I want to clarify that. I want to give you an account from Torah, from the Bible, that tells you, see if we can reconcile, what is here, because, there's a lot that David wrote, and, I lean more to where he's a man after God's own heart, more than I believe anything else. He paid for the price that he needed to pay. So let's kind of look at that, right? Let's look at that, and I want to. We're going to look at Samuel, Second Samuel. First Samuel is Samuel and Saul. Second Samuel is Saul and David, and then First Kings is David and Solomon. But we also have Chronicles that has some of David's stories. So I want to get into that, and I want to. So when you look at a Chronicle, I want you to understand where it's coming from, so that you will be very clear why some things that in Chronicles are not in Samuel. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, so this is the timeline of David. What I want you to look at is right where it says Nathan rebukes David, right, from Bathsheba. So basically, when the ark is brought back, David is happy, right? His Micah, his first wife, gets mad at him because he takes off his clothes, whatever, and he's dancing before the Lord. So he's very, very happy. So the Lord gave him rest, right? And he didn't take the ark back into the tabernacle. He puts it right in his house. He wants to take care of it himself. So he puts a tent, over the tabernacle, and he wants to keep an eye on it. So he's very happy. So, he says, man, I live in the cedar house and all this. I have everything that I need. But, the Lord doesn't have a house. So this starts the whole issue. And then he goes, he meets Bathsheba, kills Uriah, and the whole thing. So by that time, up until where you see Solomon is born, that's 9 months in there somewhere, right? So he gets Bathsheba pregnant, and then 9 months later, Solomon is born. So Nathan comes almost when the son is going to be, before Solomon, a little bit before Solomon, the year before Solomon. So this is where the issue, where Nathan comes from. I just want you to understand, everything has happened, and 9 months later, before the Bathsheba's first son is born, that's when Nathan shows up. Before that, they were talking about the house of the Lord. So this whole thing is prompted because David wants to build a house of the Lord. He says, no, I'm going to build you a house. We have an issue, and then 9 months later, Nathan says, hey, the thing that you have done is terrible. Okay, so we have to ask, why is it that no one brought up the issue? This issue is coming up 8 months after the fact. So that's what I want to go through. He feels like he's gotten away scot-free, but then Nathan comes in. Okay, so let's deal with that issue. Okay, so then the Lord said to Nathan, David, he came up to him and said, there were two men, one sitting, one rich man, the other one poor. The rich man had a great many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except for one little ewe, right? Which he brought and nourished and grew up together with him and his children, and would eat his bread and drink of his cup, and lie in his bosom. It was like a daughter to him. It's a pet to his family. Now a traveler came to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take from his own flock, of his own herd, and to prepare for the wayfarer who had come to him. Rather, he took from the man's ewe the pet lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. Then David's anger burned greatly against the man, and he said to him, as the Lord lives, surely the man who has done this deserves to die, and he must make restitution for the lamb fourfold. I want you to remember this fourfold, 4 times, because he did this thing and had no compassion. Nathan then said to David, you are the man. He said, thus said the Lord, a God of Israel, it is I who anointed you king over all of Israel, and it is I who delivered you from the hand of Saul. Okay. So it starts, all the issue starts here. Okay, I also gave you your master's house and your master's wife into your care. I gave you the house of Israel and Judah, and if I had been given you, if I give you to the Lord, I would have added to you many more things like this. Why have you despised? I want you to remember that word. Why have you despised the word of the Lord? Remember that phrase. Okay, that's Torah. That's 100% Torah in there. By doing evil in his sight, you have struck down Uriah the Hittite with a sword, and have taken his wife to be your wife, and have killed him with a sword from the sons of Ammon. Now, you didn't kill him, but by your word, he went to war, and the sons of Ammon killed him. So this is manslaying, right? This isn't murder, this is manslaying. Your word is like a president that sends a soldier to go and die, and they all die, whatever, except for this one, there was a reason, and David had an intent, right? Okay. Now therefore, the sword shall never depart from you. 1, because you have despised me, and again, you have despised me is another, is that phrase that we talked to you about, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus said the Lord. 2, behold, I will raise up evil against you, and from your own household I will even take your wives before your eyes, and give them to your companion. He shall lie with you and your wives in broad daylight. And did it secretly. Number 3, but I will do this thing before all of Israel under the sun. I will expose you in front of everybody. Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord, right? So David repents, which is a good thing. And Nathan said to David, the Lord also has taken away your sins, and you shall not die. But that phrase has a lot of detail in there. Okay, because if you murder, there's consequences to that. Okay, so repentance takes care of any sin, right? Okay, but now we have to look at what is unintentional and defined sin. However, because of the deed you have given occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme. Number 4, the child also that is born to you shall surely die. So if he has been forgiven all of his sins, why is there a consequence here? So this is a question that a lot of people are asking. Why is the son paying for the sins of the father? Okay, that's a very, very good question, and this is where, if you don't know Torah, you can't answer. You'll come up with your opinions. You're looking at commentaries. So let's answer that. Okay, so number 15 gives us unintentional and defiances. Unintentional when is something that happens that is brought to you afterwards. That is your responsibility. My bull, gores your cow, and you didn't let him out. He just got out by himself, whatever. And then, your neighbor comes and tells you, hey, man, you owe me a cow. That's unintentional sin. It's your responsibility. It's your bull. And then so therefore by repenting, you're going to restore until you restore his cow, and you take it before the elders, and the elder says, okay, are both of you guys good? Are you made whole? And then when the elder gives the okay, yeah, they did it correct. It's like going to court, right? They do it correctly. Now you can get you can get a lamb, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Also, the person who sins unintentional, then he shall offer a 1-year-old female goat or a lamb, right, for a sin offering. Okay, so in unintentional sin, you can give a sin offering after you fix everything. When you come to the tabernacle, to the gates of the tabernacle, you're coming not as a sinner, you're coming simply to follow up on what the Lord has told you. You have to give an offering, right? And then the priest will take your offering, and he'll make atonement for you, and then the lamb is completely burnt up unto the Lord, right? The priest can't eat it. Okay, so if you sin intentionally, there is a sacrifice, and it's called a 1-year-old female goat. Why a female? Because a female is a generational goat. A male, you kill him and that's it. But the female goat is going to cost you generations to come. It's a lot of lambs that will come. So it's a very expensive price. So usually when you're dealing with flocks and herds, right? Okay. Usually, if you have cows, you usually have 1 or 2 or 3 bulls, to take care of those cows. So when you have a little bull that is born, usually by year 1, by year 2, maybe even by year 3, you have to get rid of him. Because by the 3rd year, he's going to want to go and sleep with the cows and all that, and the bulls will kill him. So when you're going to barbecue, whatever, you always get the male bull, the male goat, the male ram, right? That's what you're always going to use. Or the ones that you're going to sell is always going to be the males. You don't sell the females. Very rarely you do it unless you need some good money. So this is why for any other offering, you would give a male lamb, a male goat, a male bull, a male ram that you would always give, because you're doing it because you have to thin out the herd of the bulls that were there. If you have 15 bulls to your flock, you're always going to have fights. And what they'll do is they'll even gore the cows because the cows get it in there. So you minimize the amount of bulls that are there, so to keep the fights away from that. So in a regular offering, it requires a male. And a sin offering is going to require a female all the time, so that you won't do this every week, every 2 weeks. You run out of female lambs, so it's very expensive. You learn your lesson. You don't want to repeat this lesson anymore, right? And then so you shall have one law for him who does anything unintentionally, and for him who is native among your sons of Israel, or for the alien who sojourns among you. It's one law for everybody completely, right? Okay, but the person who does anything defiantly, okay, you do it intentionally, you lie in wait, right? Whether he is native or alien, that one is blaspheming against the Lord. And that person shall be cut off from among his people, because the word that I told you before, the phrase that I told you before, because he has despised the word of the Lord, right? And has broken his commandments. That person shall be completely cut off. His guilt shall be upon him. Anyone that does anything defiantly, there is no sacrifice. You can't murder someone and come to the altar and give a sin sacrifice. Can't do that. There is no sin sacrifice. In other words, they'll kick you out from among the people, or if you kill someone, they'll kill you. So this in number 15, a little bit after this, is going to be an issue where the man is going to go and pick up sticks on the Sabbath, and a lot of people see him do this. So he has witnesses there that saw him what was going to do. So they got the man, took him to Moses, and Moses didn't know what to do. So he asked the Lord, and the Lord says, "Yeah, you need to kill him, yeah, because all the witnesses that are there, and if you don't do anything with him, then the next Sabbath, everybody's going to be picking up sticks." Now, the issue with this man is he was picking it up on the Sabbath because nobody was there. So he was picking up sticks in order to be able to sell them, during the week or whatever, or he wanted to get the choicest part of everything that was there. But there was plenty of witnesses that saw him do it. So this means that if God doesn't take care of this, and Moses doesn't take care of this, like I said, the next Sabbath, everybody will be doing this. So there had to be a lesson there. So they took him and they stoned him because of all the witnesses that were there. So I want to ask you at this point, who witnesses David murder? Who witnesses David adultery? He's the king. Any of you want to go and tell on the king? I mean, it's you have to have witnesses, but no one is going to tell on the king, right? So, but the one that does something defiantly, they'll cut him off, or they'll stone him. They'll kill him. If he does anything defiantly, or they'll cut him off, and then whatever happens to him afterwards is going to be what the issue is. But it's usually a blood for blood, eye for an eye, and so in David's case again, who witnessed him getting rid of Uriah? The only one that would know would be Bathsheba, if he would have told her, or it would be Joab. He told Joab, "Go put him in the war and then make sure he's at the very front." So Joab could have been one of the witnesses. But again, who's going to witness against, like, the president or the king? Nobody is. So David thinks he's got away with it. So 9 months later is when Nathan shows up, when the baby is about to be born. And this is the issue where we're at. The child also that is born unto you shall surely die. So the child is a child going to pay for the unintentional sin of David? That that doesn't sound justice. It doesn't sound righteous. So let's deal with that. Let's look at that. So the child that was born to you shall surely die. So is this David's child or whose child is? So Ezekiel 8:10 says that the sins of the father cannot be placed on the sons, and the sins of the son cannot be placed on the father. Okay, and now Ezekiel is talking about when they're in exile, right? So this is all brought out, during the 70 years. Okay. And yet you say, why should the son not bear the punishment of the father's iniquity? When the son has practiced justice and righteousness, the son hasn't done anything wrong. And this is a baby that hasn't done anything wrong or wrong either. And has observed all my statutes and done them, he shall surely live. 20, the person who sins will die. Well, David sinned. So why is the son, according to what we're reading, is paying for the price of David, right? That's the way we look at it, unless we look at a couple of other issues, right? The son will not bear the punishment for the father's iniquity, nor the father the punishment for the son's iniquity. The righteous of the righteous will be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked will be upon themselves, right? So the man that sins, he shall surely die. Okay, so far we're okay, right? So I'm telling you, the son cannot be killed for David's sin, according to the part of the Torah that is here, or even though this is the prophet, but it goes back to the Torah. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so then the Lord spoke to Moses, Exodus 13, right? Exodus 13, saying, sanctify to me every firstborn. This is when they're coming out of Egypt, right? Every firstborn, the firstborn of every womb among the sons of Israel, among the people and animals alike, the one that breaks a womb, like the firstborn, it belongs to me. So this is Bathsheba's first child. David's, I don't know how many, eighth or ninth, right? So it's not David, it's the womb of the woman. Okay, 34. The first offspring from every womb belongs to me, and all your male livestock, the first offspring from the cattle and the sheep, and you shall redeem with the land the first offspring from the donkey. And if you do not redeem it for the donkey, right, then you shall break its neck. It's not good for you. You shall redeem all the firstborn of your sons, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. So the firstborn of the woman, Bathsheba, has to be redeemed. This son did not belong to David yet, right? Okay, every firstborn of the woman of all flesh, whether human or animal, which they offered to the Lord, shall be yours. When they offer to the Lord, when you redeem them, however, you must redeem the human firstborn, and the firstborn of every firstborn of unclean animals you shall redeem. As for the redemption price from a month old, you shall redeem them by your assessment, 5 shekels in silver by the shekel of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs, right? Okay, so I just kind of, did a little Google search to see how much it would be or whatever. But basically, it's for 5 shekels. 1 shekel is about $50.80. So it's about $254, $255, 5 shekels, and that's what you would have to pay. Back, silver goes up and it goes down, so it depends, right? And so it's the weight of the sanctuary. It could have been a lot less. I'm just telling you what it would be now. So when do you redeem them? Okay, and that's what I want to look at, because David, when this is happening to his child, and he becomes sick for 7 days, he hasn't redeemed the child. So it's not David's anymore. And so when he says, as long as the child was alive, I was okay, but then when he was dead, okay, so he just got up and took. So we have to understand that phrase. Why does he do that? David therefore inquired of God for the child. And David fasted and went and lay all night on the ground. Then the elders of the household stood before him, the stewards of the house stood before him, and in order to raise him up from the ground, but he wasn't willing to, would not eat food with him. Okay. Then it happened that on the 7th day that the child died. Why is that important? Okay. And the whole thing. They heard them. David heard them that they were speaking against each other. It says he said to them, David arose from the ground, washed and anointed himself, and he changed his clothes. When they told it, David perceived that the child was dead. So David says to his servants, "The child dead?" They told him, "Yes." So David washed up and everything, and so they asked him, what is it that you're doing? He said, "While the child was alive, I fasted and I wept, for I said, who knows, maybe the Lord may be gracious unto me that the child may live. But now that he has died," in other words, God gave him the answer, "why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? No. I shall go to him, but he will surely not return to me. Okay, so we need to answer this. What happened? Okay. On the 8th day, the child will be circumcised, and the child will be given a name. And then the offering usually is somewhere by the 30th day that they are getting redeemed. But even when you look at John and Jesus, on the 8th day they were circumcised, and then they gave an offering. So on the 8th day, if he got to the 8th day, and then David would have named him, and David would have redeemed him, then it would have been David's child, and then if he died, he would have paid for the sins of the father. This is not David's child. The child still belonged to the Lord. So God said, "You're not going to get this child." Right? So, God made a choice, right? And so we can't say that the child paid for the sins of David. God did not give it to David, and this is so. You see the transaction that is there when the child died. David said, "Okay, he's giving me his answer. He's not going to give it to me." So, and then it's a little bit after this is David went and comforted Bathsheba, and then they get Samuel in the end. Okay, so number one, now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house. This is again the issue of why is the family having to pay for all of this stuff? Okay, so again, if it isn't that they're going to pay, it's because of what David had done. He's going to lose some things. So all the blessings were upon David. Now God can't bless him. So he's going to curse him in the sense that he can't bless him anymore. So David is going to start losing everything, his house, his palace, the place where and all the family that is living with him is going to pay the consequences for the sin of David. Not the sin that are on them, but the consequences of what David is going to lose, because this is his household. If a person goes and kills someone, and they live in a good house and has 4 children and a wife and dogs and everything else, and then the person goes to prison, and the house can't be taken care of. You're going to lose the house. You may lose some of the kids, whatever, and some of the kids may rebel. Will never speak to you again. And this is what's going to happen in David's life. Okay, remember, go back to the graph that I gave you. Solomon is going to be born the next year around, and then Absalom is going to rebel a couple of years after that, 2 or 3 years after that. Absalom rebelled because he saw what David did, right? And then when David rebelled, it is Absalom that is going to make a lot of these consequences on his own father. Okay, so Absalom commanded his servant. Okay, so Absalom's sister, right, gets raped by Absalom's, one of the other wife's brothers, or one of the other wife's sons. So afterwards, Absalom is going to do a party or something like that, and he wants Ammon to come in, and then so they're setting this up. Then Absalom commanded his servants, saying, See now, when Ammon's heart is cheerful with wines, and in other words, when he's drunk, and I say to you, strike Ammon, then put him to death. Do not fear. Have I not commanded you myself? Be courageous and be valiant. I'm the one that's giving you the commands. And the servants of Absalom did to Amnon just as Absalom had commanded, and all the kings, the other sons, right, got up and each one mounted his mule and fled. So David, after he hears about this, he thinks that Absalom has killed all the sons. That's the rumor that comes out of that, But Jonadab, the son Shimei, David's brother, responded, said, let my lord not assume that they have been put to death, all the young men. The king's son, for only Amnon is dead because he has been set up by the intent of Absalom since that day that he violated his sister Tamar, since he raped his sister Tamar. Okay, now may the Lord, the king, take his report at heart, claiming that not all the sons are dead, but only Amnon is dead, right? Okay, so this is Absalom that breaks up the sword against David's own family. And then we have the issue where Absalom is also killed. Absalom encountered the servants of David. Remember that Absalom takes power, sits by the gate, gets all the elders to follow him, whatever, and he makes David and his people leave. And by leaving, and all of Israel saw him, whatever. But so after that, then they find Absalom, right? His mule went under the branches of a massive oak. Then his head caught firmly in the oak, and he was left hanging between the sky and earth, while the mule that was undercut him kept going. So he stuck in an oak tree. Okay. Now, when certain men saw him, they went and told Joab, right, Joab, and said to the man who had informed him, so behold, you saw him? Where do you see him? So then the man told Joab, even if I were to receive 1,000 pieces of silver in my hand, I would not put my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing, the king commanded you, Abishai and Ittai, saying, protect the young man Absalom for me. Don't kill him. But Joab does not like Absalom at all, right? So then Joab says, I will not waste any time here with you. So he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them to the heart of Absalom while he was still alive in the midst of the oak. And then the other 10 young men also came in and killed Absalom. Okay, so now when David hears this, he just, he weeps. He's going to get his kingdom back, but he's weeping. He's weeping because, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of insight here. He thinks it's Absalom, the one that's going to be building the temple, and I'll tell you why. Solomon has barely been born. It's maybe now 3 or 4 years old. So David still thinks that Absalom is going to be redeemable, and that's the son that's going to build the temple. And I'll show you a little bit why. Okay, thus says the Lord. Now, this is number 2, right? Behold, I will raise up evil against you from your old household. Even I will even take your wives before your eyes and give them to your companion. He shall lie with your wives in broad daylight. Okay. When was this? Okay, so in 2 Samuel now, this is before Bathsheba, right? Before now Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah was dead. She mourned for her husband, and then at the time of mourning was over, 30 days, David said to his servant and had her brought into his house, and she became his wife. So he gets her pregnant. After 30 days, then he marries her. So now it's almost 7 months when the child is going to be born. So then she bore him a son, but the thing that David had done was evil in the sight of the Lord, because you have done evil inside of me. Your wives will also be taken to you. So what happened there? Absalom said to Ahithophel. Okay, and the Ahithophel is the counselor of Absalom. He says, give me advice, what should we do? So he wanted, now David has left, right? But he left some of his concubines there, to take care of the house while he was gone. So Ahithophel said to Absalom, have relations with all your father's concubines, whom he has left behind to take care of the house. Then all of Israel will hear that you have made yourself repulsive to your father, right? The hands of all who are with you will also be strengthened. So now they know, it's very, very clear that the ones that want to go with David, they can. But they'll know, that you have done against this David. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof for everybody to see. And Absalom had relations with all his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. His own son did to him what he did to Uriah. Right? Now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was taken as though one had inquired of the word of God. I guess they thought of him like a prophet or whatever. So was all the advice of Ahithophel regarded by both David and Absalom. Okay. Now we're going to look at 3. But I will do this thing before all of Israel. You did this thing in secret. Oh, so for 7 months, nobody knew what you had done. You did it in secret. Nobody knew of this. There were no witnesses against you. And even if they were, because I'm sure the servants of the house knew everything that was going on there. And they brought Bathsheba to him. They knew she was pregnant. They heard about Uriah. But none of them were going to be a witness against David. That isn't going to happen. Right? Okay, so how did it become public for everybody? Okay, so you saw that, so they pitched it for Absalom on the roof, and in the sight of all Israel. This was done so that everybody would know that David would be repulsed by Absalom. He wouldn't, it's an evil thing to be doing that to his father. And we can go to Torah. The son should not lie with the father's wife, and all. We can all go all on it, but you can see it clearly. It's here. Reuben did this supposedly did the same thing to Jacob, right? 2 Samuel 15, and David was going into now this is when Absalom is taking over. And he's coming into Jerusalem, and David leaves. David was going up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, right? Weeping as he went, and his head was covered. And he was walking barefoot. And all the people who were with him, each covered his own head. And they were going up weeping as they went, right? And then David was saying, well, I hope the wisdom of Ahithophel is going to be foolish, but it's too late. They were going to do what they needed to do. So, and then even the Levites brought in the ark when they saw David leaving. They brought up the ark, and they were going to follow me. He said, no, stay here. Stay here. If it's the Lord's will, I come back, the ark will be here. But I don't want you to follow me wherever I go. Let it stay, in the palace. It'll be fine there. And then some of the other, important men also wanted to go with him. And he told them, no, you stay here and go and tell Absalom you're in his charge. So this is the only way I'm going to know what's happening in the house. So in other words, if you have to lie to him, whatever, lie to him, but tell me what's going on. You can tell Zadok and Abiathar, the high priest, you can go and tell them, and they will get word to me. So David, he's humble. He's humble now. He knows exactly what is going. He knows all of this stuff is because of the sin that he created. It affects his house. It's not that they're paying for his sin, but it affects his house. Right? They're all under his care. So they are going to pay the consequences for his sin, not for the sin, the consequences for the sin, the curses for the sins, because they're in his house. Okay, so here I want you to look at this chart all over again. So David is brought up has brought up the Ark of the Covenant. He says, "I want to build the Lord a house." So they have the discussion between him and Naaman, and Naaman and the Lord. God is not talking directly to David. Naaman is the prophet. Okay, but you'll see in 9 months, actually 2 years, right after 2 years, Solomon is born. Okay, and after about 3 years, Absalom takes over the gates of the city, right? So you have to understand the chronology is here. So whenever we're talking about Solomon, or we're going to make a reference exact from 2 Samuel, he's a child, right? He becomes king after 20 years old. So there's 20 years that has to happen, and then 10 more years before Solomon builds the temple. So when David is building the temple, Solomon isn't a part of the conversation. I'm telling you that so you'll understand exactly what we're looking at here. Okay, so we want to look at what the Bible says about David. This is Samuel talking to Saul, right? But now your kingdom shall not endure. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him ruler over all his people. And Samuel went in and anointed him, right? Because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you to. So here we have that phrase, a man after his own heart, when he has just been anointed, right? Okay, so we need to reconcile it because, again, look at where we're looking at this. We're looking at 2 Chronicles 22. Then he called for his son Solomon and commanded him to build a house for the Lord, God of Israel. David said to Solomon, my son, I have intended to build a house for the name of the Lord. My God, I don't know how old Solomon is here. It could be 12, he could be 14 years old, right? But the word of the Lord came to me saying, you have shed much blood and you have waged great wars. You shall not build a house for my name because you have shed so much blood on the earth before me. Behold, a son will be born to you who shall be a man of rest, right? A man of shalom. Shalom, right? And I will give him rest from all his enemies on every side, for his name will be Solomon. And I will give him peace and quiet in Israel in those days. Okay, now, Kings and Samuel were written a little bit after the events that happened here, right? So if we're going to look at Samuel, it says you will have a son and he will build a house. Now, I think David thinks that this is Absalom that will do that. Again, Solomon isn't born yet, right? He isn't born yet, so David still has hopes that his firstborn from David will be, the one that will build the temple. When you're looking at Chronicles, this is maybe, 100 years or 200 years, 2 centuries after the issue that is here. And so the issue is now when Chronicles was written way after the fact, we have all the stories. So Chronicles gives you the names of the individuals that were there, while Samuel and Kings don't always give you the names of the individuals who are there. We don't know yet, while it's being written. And Chronicles will fill in the groups. Now, Chronicles is not a part of the Samuel and the Kings. Chronicles is part of the writings. We don't know who wrote Chronicles, but it's part of the writings, and so it has to be. In some things in Chronicles, you have to reconcile with Samuel and Kings because it counters whatever Samuel and Kings will tell you. But when you were looking at Chronicles, it is way after the fact. And when you mention the word Chronicles, you're looking at something that that has all the information. For example, in Deuteronomy, when Moses is telling about the golden calf, right? And so he makes a statement in Deuteronomy 40 years after the fact. He said, you didn't know, but God wanted to kill Aaron. he wanted to kill them at that time. And no, I beseech the Lord on his behalf. But you don't find that in Exodus when the incident happened. He doesn't say anything about Aaron. We find it 40 years after the fact when when Deuteronomy, when he's standing there and he's given the people all this information, he blurts it out. Well, God was going to kill Aaron at this point. So when we're looking at Deuteronomy, we're looking at the same thing. This is after the fact, and Moses is giving you information that nobody knew. Okay, because in Exodus he didn't bring it up, right? And so this is the same thing with Chronicles and First Kings, Second Kings, and First Samuel and First Kings. Second Samuel and First Kings. It's done after the fact. So anytime somebody says, let's look at the book of Chronicles, you automatically know that you will get information that is not in the original post that was there. And that's why you see Samuel, right? Okay. Then he called for his son Solomon, right? And commanded him. David said to Solomon. Again, we don't know how old he is, but this is Chronicles. If we were looking at 2 Samuel, then, or 1 Samuel or 2 Samuel, we would be thinking David is thinking about Absalom. But by Chronicles, Absalom is already dead, right? And probably Solomon is already king. He may already have died and stuff, So it makes a difference, the book that you're looking at in order to get the information. So what I'm telling you is you have shed much blood and great wars. This isn't in the original concept where Nathan had talked to David, right? This isn't there. This is added after the fact. I'm not saying it's not going to be there. Yes, it's here. Where we also have, a man after God's own heart. But again, this is way after the fact. So to me, this is an issue because who sent him, to go and kill Goliath? Who made David a man of war? Who sent him to take care of all of Israel? And then who went before him in all of his victories? Who gave David all of his victories? And when the Lord had given, David victories over all his over all his enemies, he gave him rest. So if the Lord went before him, then why would the Lord here be making the statement, because of what you think, because you killed a lot of blood or whatever, you shed a lot of blood, okay, you can't build a temple. So this is a little bit of a phrase that needs to be reconciled. I think after he repented, he was still a man after God's own heart. And a lot of the things that were written in the Psalms was written before First Chronicles. So we just have to reconcile it. We have to look at it. I'm not telling you that it's not there. It's just put it in order. But it doesn't carry as to me as much weight, because you shed a lot of blood. When I'm the one that sent you there, you should not build a house. But I think it was the timing was David is already maybe 60 something years old when Solomon becomes the king, and then it'll take like another 10 years for the temple to be built. In other words, I think David is saying, you've done what you needed to do. I've given you rest. You won't build it. Your son will build it to me. 30 years after the fact. So by then, David is dead. So it's a lot of reconciliation that we have to do. So chronology is important. You have to understand the chronology that is here. Otherwise, we get everything mixed up. We're debating, and I created this debate, which one is true? Can you reconcile it? I just reconciled it for you. Okay, so David plans to build a temple now. So 2 Samuel 7. Came about when the king lived in the house, and the Lord said that the king said to Nathan, "See, now I live in the house of cedar, but the ark of the God remains in the tent." So he said. Nathan tells him, "Oh, this is a good thing. Go on and do what is in your heart, and the Lord will bless you." And then he's leaving, and God tells Nathan, I didn't talk to you. Now go back and tell him what I'm going to say. Right? But the same night, the word of the Lord came to Nathan saying, go say to my servant David, this is what the Lord says. Should you build me a house for my dwelling? It's a rhetorical question, right? For I have not dwelt in a house from the day that I brought out the sons of Israel to Egypt, but at that time, but even to this day, rather I have moved around in a tent, that is, in a dwelling place. Wherever the Levites took it, that's where my name was going to be placed, right? Okay, and so I have seen, I have been with you wherever you have gone and have eliminated all your enemies. See, this is what I was telling you. This is Samuel, right? He hasn't given him the commandment, you shed a lot of blood. He says, I have eliminated all your enemies from you. And I will also make a great name for you. Really? Okay, like the names of the great men who are on earth. Even from the day that I appointed judges over my people Israel, will give you rest from all your enemies. So there's no, because you shed a lot of blood, right? That seems to be added in afterwards. And the Lord also declared to you that the Lord will build a house for you. And if David was so evil, and if David was a murderer, why is the Lord going to establish his house as from the king of Judah, along with the rest of his sons, to where Mashiach, the Messiah, will come? We need to reconcile this. So that's a phrase that is added afterwards, and we have to give it the weight that it has. This has a lot more weight. When your days are finished and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your descendant after you, who will come up from you, and I will establish his kingdom. He doesn't give him a name. And he shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. He thinks it's Absalom, and I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. He thinks it's Absalom right here. Absalom hasn't died. Absalom hasn't rebelled. When he goes wrong, I will discipline him with a rod of men and with strokes of the sons of mankind. Okay, but my favor shall not depart from him. And as I took it away from Saul, when I removed it from you, your house and your kingdom shall endure before me forever, and your throne shall be established forever. So you make a covenant with David, right? Nothing about the shedding of blood, because this is in 2 Samuel, right? So Chronicles, after everything has happened, then Shlomo is added in here. Solomon is added in here, because that's the son that I will be a father to him, and he will be a son unto me. So Chronicles adds the son that becomes the king at that time. At this point, Absalom has died. Okay, so again, 1 Chronicles 28:2. Let's read the same story here. Then King David rose to his feet and said, "Listen to me, my brothers and my people." Okay, this is not in Samuel, right? I had intended to build a permanent house. So he's in front of all the people, the elders here, for the Ark of the Covenant, for the Lord, and for the footstool of our God. So I had made preparation to build it. But God said to me, this is David making a revelation, and to all the people that we're not going to find in the original event. You shall not build a house for me for my name, because you are a man of war and have shed much blood. Right? Yet the Lord, the God of Israel, chose me anyway. So we have to look at what the shedding of blood there. Again, if God told him to take care of Israel, why is he going to hold the shedding of blood with a sword against David if he did a good job? And the Lord, because of what David did, gave him all the rest. So that's a phrase that we have to look at it, right? Because even then, God told him, I'm building you a house. This guy is a murderer, and his intent is always evil, right? then God wouldn't be doing this. For he has chosen Judah to be a leader. In the house of Judah, my father's house, and among the sons of my father, he took pleasure in me to make me the king of all Israel. Of all my sons, for the Lord has given me many sons. So, Chronicles, right? We know who the sons are, right? He has chosen my son Shlomo, Solomon, to sit on the throne of the kingdom of the Lord of Israel. He said to me, your son Solomon is the one who shall build my house. Again, Chronicles is way, way after the fact when this is written. So they know what the story is, and they're filling in the information there. The events, are the same, but maybe the information, the detail is not the same. We don't have that David rose and talked to all the elders in this case. So it may have been after 2 Samuel was written, right? That all of this stuff happened, but I'm just giving you a comparison. If David was evil and he shed a lot of blood, he wouldn't be the king of the Messiah. The Messiah wouldn't be coming from his sin, and God would not make a covenant with him. So we know automatically David is a man that repents, on a dime, he'll repent quickly, and he'll restore whatever he has to be restored quickly. But again, I told you that the intentional sin, like murder, has a consequence. You can repent, but it's going to affect you and the family that is below you. There's consequences of this. So this is what we have seen. Okay, I try to give you as much information about his heart and his soul. And David is the king because he repented so quickly. And then if you want to know his intent, read all the Psalms. read everything that he wrote. And you'll see the tenderness of his heart. So I have a problem with somebody is telling me, no, he's a man that shed much blood because this is what God told him. So I have to put that in perspective for you. Don't give that a lot of weight. Right, but take his everything that he does, and put the weight around his intent and the way that he dealt and the way that he followed the Lord. David's heart is a good heart, and his heart is like one that is after the Lord. Just read Psalm 119, right? Garanaya Nita Mitorateka, open my eyes that I may see the hidden things in your Torah. David was always looking for his God. Psalms 119, all the verses that are there, 160 something, everything is there. I'm searching for the Lord. He says, now I know more than all my teachers, he says, because I know the commandments of the Lord. But yet he fell. But as soon as he fell, he repented. But there's consequences. That will happen, and he followed it. And you imagine a son that dies. Imagine some of your wives that are raped. He knows, and he's a humble guy. He knows it happened. He brought it all upon himself. Anyway, God bless you. And if you have any questions, just email me. And I hope this clarified a lot of the stuff. So you can answer it via Torah, answer it the right way, straight out of the Bible. God bless.